Welcome back to Hardball. President Obama, in an interview with BuzzFeed, talked about the anguish of talking to the parents and family members of hostages and telling them that the United States will do everything possible to secure their release except pay ransom.
My immediate reaction is heartbreak. I've been in touch with Kayla's family. She was an outstanding young woman and a great spirit. And I think that spirit will live on. The one thing that we have held to is a policy of not paying ransoms with an organization like ISIL. And the reason is that once we start doing that, not only are we financing their slaughter of innocent people and strengthening their organization, but we're actually making Americans even greater targets for future kidnappings. It's as tough as anything that I do, having conversation with parents who understandably want by any means necessary for their children to be safe.
The president went on to point out that paying ransom actually makes Americans less safe.
The one thing that we have held to is a policy of not paying ransoms with an organization like ISIL. And the reason is that once we start doing that, not only are we financing their slaughter of innocent people and strengthening their organization, but we're actually making Americans even greater targets for future kidnappings.
But is paying ransom to terrorists always wrong? Joining me right now is the Atlantic's Steve Clemens and Maryland U.S. Congresswoman Donna Edwards. Steve, you first, because you take a position which is not common. Tell me what you think about the appropriateness of an individual or an organization that has one of their members or family members taken captive by an ISIS-type organization. What should they do if they're called upon to pay ransom?
I think if families have the resources, if they have the ability to move in that save their loved ones, I don't think government should be impeding that process. This is too dire a process. It's there. I feel that government should stay out of it, but the fact is lots of governments do pay ransoms, and so you have essentially conflict between European governments and American in not paying them. I think they all not to pay them, but we ought to remove the restrictions on families doing whatever they can to save their loved ones. I know it sounds like I have made conflict with myself, but I just don't see it is right that the United States government says it may prosecute families if they proceed in getting ransom money paid for their loved ones.
Congressman, where are you on private families with the wealth to do it? Should they be giving the money to the ISIS forces to use as they will? They're not going to use it to pay for food for children. They're going to use it for guns and bullets and torture. But do you think they should be doing that, morally or politically, whatever?
Well, I think as the president has described, I mean, it's a heart-wrenching choice for families, but I agree with the United States policy. I think it's unfortunate, frankly, that some of our allies are indeed paying ransom, and I think that's up the ante for terrorists to continue their kidnapping and hostage-taking and to continue to finance their destruction. And so as sad as it is, I think the government policy is the correct one, and my heart just breaks for families like Kayla, as a wonderful young woman who was just trying to do good in the world. But I do think it's the right policy for the United States.
Well, let me go back to that question to you, Steve. What about the use of the money? It's a two-way street. You give a couple $1 million or whatever the current price is, $20 million. You may have the family or you may have a corporation behind you that's willing to dip into their treasury for that. That's $20 million or $2 million, whatever, goes towards the assets of a horrible, inhuman crowd. How do you justify that?
No. I mean, it's not a justifiable thing. I mean, absolutely. If you give money to organizations, it enhances the market for taking them. I think governments ought to do everything they can to stop that market from growing, except for the fact if a family member or someone was taken, I think that we ought to impede it. And we're inconsistent. You know,
I think you've got a problem
I happen to know in the case of David Rohde of the New York Times, the New York Times offered a ransom, and the U.S. government didn't threaten the New York Times.
Well, what happens if you give somebody a lot of money? Are they likely to take another hostage and ask for more money? It seems to me that would be human nature.
Of course they are, but yeah, but Chris, I agree with you that what you said last night. I think that there are other elements of power to go down and track, kill, try, bring to justice those people that kidnap people, and that ought not to be a pressure that's borne, by the family of James Foley, Kayla Mueller, and others.
Last word to the Congresswoman. What would you say to a friend of yours who may be a person of great means, who has a lot of money in the bank, and their young son or daughter is grabbed? What would you say to them when they came to you for counsel? What would you do?
You know what? If my son were grabbed, I would want to do everything possible to free him, including reaching out to anybody I know who's wealthy to do that. I mean, that is the inequality in all of this, the inequity in it. But I do think that our policy is the right one, and I think that we have an obligation to try to pursue these terrorists and to stop the terror. But I would hate for us to change our policy. I do think that it has kept us and our citizens actually safer, knowing that there isn't this point of negotiation. And I really do worry about our citizens around the world who might be subject to hostage taking if they knew that there was a great ransom at stake.
Well said. Thank you so much, Steve Clements, my friend. Thank you very much, U.S. Congresswoman Donna Edwards, also my friend. Up next, what got David Axelrod before Barack Obama won the 2008 presidential race? You will be astounded by the news. It's in his book. Axelrod's coming here in a minute, and this is Hardball, a place for politics.